Yep, there you go. Woohoo!
I will facilitate the practice of constitutional reform today. Today, we're going to discuss different topics and then give a background information, talk about concepts we use to assist us in writing an alliance document. For example, the current FCT Constitution and its revisions and amendments, the IRA of 1934. What are the issues of the IRA? Concepts such as sovereignty, treaties, diminish sovereignty. I would use sovereignty and the treaties to help show how we integrated the information in the concepts we studied to develop the alliance document. Following this brief presentation, Wally Storbakken of Leech Lake will explain what an alliance is. Marcy McIntyre of Grand talk about the preamble and the first chapter of the alliance document. I will follow with an explanation of the last articles in the document. Lastly, there will be a question and answer period. We welcome your comments and suggestions for change, which will be brought back to the drafting committee and then to the individual delegations for discussion with their citizens.
That's because our people since time immemorial have always entered into alliances, even down to the most simple act of our creation. We are an alliance. Even to our acts as human beings, our marriages are alliances. And everything grows from there, our alliance of our families, through our clans, our alliance of our communities, through our bands, our alliances of our bands, into our tribe and our nation. It's all based on our big alliance together with our common interests. And that's why we have our alliances. And an alliance is nothing more than, say, a treaty or an agreement that says, this is how I'm going to behave towards you. This is how you're going to behave towards me. These are the things I can expect of you. Say, for instance, hey, the tribe over here wants to go to war. Will you help me? No. Well, if you're in an alliance, you'll say, well, I'll consider that. And if you're on the right and you think you're on the right, yes, we will help you out. But if you're not, then we might not help you out. But that's what the agreement is, and that's what the alliances are. And that's what this whole document is intended to be, to show those things that we have in common and must defend together, those things and our responsibilities towards each other in defending those things and in creation itself. That's the alliance.
Thank you.
Unified Nombreux, Marcy McIntyre, Linda Jenakaz, Kichioni Domingue, Mendonjiban. I would like to explain why we are using certain cultural, historical information to do our Constitution. First of all, on the list is the name. Now that's Mazembe Gun, and we asked certain Ojibwe language speakers about what we should call this document, because it's a constitution, right? But, it was deemed that the word constitution, it's a Chimocaman word, and we wanted something from our cultural heritage. So it was told to us that, long time ago, when the chiefs went to Washington back in the 1800s, they had documents, and it was referred to as Mazinigan. Mazinigan, it just means paper. Don't be afraid of the word, but it can also refer to this document. And then the Mamawi and Anishinaabe Nation, also known as Chippewa, we put in brackets, also known as Chippewa, because our treaty documents and other things, they refer to us as Chippewa. So it was told to us that we should leave that in there somehow, so that we know what we're talking about. And then Mamawi and Anishinaabe, that just means we are all Anishinaabe together, all of us together, united like one happy family. And then underneath our name, which is our new name, by the way, we have the Constitution Alliance. It shows that we are going to have this alliance. It also means all working together as a happy family. And this was written by Wally Storbakken. And if the tribal members want to add things, make this more clear, this can still be done. This isn't written in stone. So hopefully the idea of the alliance will be incorporated throughout the document. And it's a good start here within the preamble. It shows that we're allying ourselves with our own reservations, plus Sandy Lake, which is the 7th, and then we can also ally ourselves with other Ojibwe nations. And there are many people who believe that we should be allied with Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, and even the Montana folks, because we're all Anishinaabe, and many people have expressed that view that we should have an alliance together. Whether or not that will materialize in the future, that's a good question. Now, Article 1 is the origin, and a lot of people they want this document, the Mazinigan, to be Ojibwe or Anishinaabe, and we are so used to living in two worlds, and the Chimocaman world is really repulsive to a lot of us. It's a place where we don't really fit in and where we don't understand. So we're talking about, the origin, our creation story, and this has been watered down. We had a really long, a really long piece before, but it's been condensed. And then Article 2 is Bimandizi Win, and that just means the good life. And it talks about how we are supposed to live as a people, how we can all get along together, and how we can be just people living together in a good society. In other words, what we need to do. And my view is really difficult to live the traditional life. It is very complicated and very many aspects of it. And this is our attempt to talk about how we lived together in the past, a lot of this is from our grand medicine. Some of it you'll recognize is from the 7 grandfathers, but our, being my Disney went grandfathers. In fact, some of our people say that there's 12 grandfathers. But anyhow, it also talks about the rights of nature, how we treat each other. Like the elders are important, but so are the children. The women are important, and so are the men. They always used to say, well, women should be cherished, they should be treated well, but then they also said the same thing about the children. The children need to be listened to, and the elders need to be listened to because they've lived a long time and they have a lot of knowledge. And so the way we treat each other, the way we treat our environment, it all has to do with our historical, cultural knowledge, things that work, that we, sure, we went hunting and fishing and gathering out there, but there were ways to give thanks to the creator and to the earth for taking what we needed. And like this idea of incorporating our philosophy, our basic Anishinaabe philosophy into a working lawful document. It's because that's the way we think, that's the way we have worked in the past. Some of our reservations and councils, we retain some of this, and we're trying to incorporate more and do a better job of that. Now, the rights of nature, this is taken from a lot of different places. We studied a lot of documents that other indigenous people wrote, and just what should be encompassed in the rights of nature. And we put it together according to Anishinaabe thought and our way of thinking.
I understand what you're saying.
So that's the
I
rights
do
of
understand what you're
nature.
saying, but they all have access.
And we
to
can
that
scroll
document.
down
It's
to
online.
article number 4. Okay, see, we have treaty rights, and the treaties are very one-sided, but we looked at all the treaties that had anything to do with Anishinaabe, or what they said Chippewa nations, and they said we were nations. That was one good thing about the treaties, but it was basically taking our land and giving us in return, like maybe yard goods of fabric or trinkets or whatever, paying a small amount of money that was spent really quickly. But we took from the treaties what we could find that was in our benefit. And the reserve rights, that means that if it doesn't say we don't have those rights, we retain those rights. We have these sovereign rights. I'll mix this in with Article 5, that we have these sovereign rights. We functioned as tribal governments dating back to antiquity, long before there was any contact with the Chamokaman, and we have these sovereign rights, which are also declared to be rights of indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And then Article 6 is the clans. Some of you know your clan, and some of the people don't know their clan, but we have clans, and the idea of the clans it goes right back to the, Be My Busy Wind and also the rights of nature, because the clans are, they're the animals, they're the bear, the sturgeon, the fish, they're all animal clan, and you have to respect your clan. You have to respect those animals. In fact, we're supposed to respect all the animals, especially the small ones who serve as messengers for us. This is all involved in our identity, that you have a way of life that relates to what our clan's symbol does, our dodame, and we have to respect this stuff. So the clans are all intertwined in, Be My Busy Wind and the rights of nature, and then also everything else about how we treat each other. Okay, there's external government relationships. This is Article 7, and so we are governed by these treaties, and also this very complex law in Indian law. And with the treaties, there's not really a whole lot we can do with it. And then also certain Supreme Court cases, there's not a whole lot we can do with it. And then also with Minnesota, we're under Public Law 280, and unless that's repealed, there's some certain things we just have to live with. And so basically, that's what this Article 7 is all about, but we're trying to write it in a way that it benefits us. I know some people won't like it, and it is really reprehensible, the state that we are in currently, and what our ancestors had to face, but we just have to make the best of what we have, and legally, and one thing that the treaties do establish us as indigenous nations. That's a great help. It shows that we are in fact sovereign people. So then the next article, Article 8, self-determination. Now this came out of something we read in the treaties from the 1820s, and it was a very it was a statement in one of the treaties that basically showed that we're conquered people. It didn't say it in those words, but so it's a statement to say that no, we're not. We have our self-determination and sovereignty based upon our existence as tribal people that was never extinguished. We have always operated as a type of government, and otherwise we wouldn't be federally recognized, because that's one of the requirements of federal recognition, that we have always operated as governments or some kind of political authority. And then also the admission of additional tribal nations. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, and that's number 9. And that's about it. And I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have. Miigwech. Miu.
No. Still can't hear online very well, but that's no problem.
It was a good portion of screen. You wouldn't have to do this every time. It just makes it constant. So it becomes-
What?
If we share screen, and then we push it through, you will not have to go up here and take off, stop sharing. No, it's gonna be shared, so you don't have to stop it.
We need to keep going.
Our chairman, Lenny, has, our secretary treasurer, Lenny, has to leave too. So Lenny, do you have any questions? Okay. So, thank you.
And again, no sound.
Oh, there's
Starting with Article 10,
There you go.
I'm discussing the territory and jurisdiction. The people of our nation historically and do still inhabit the boundaries of Turtle Island, North America. We wanted to put a little bit of the history of where our people came from. Section 2 deals with the fact that we had the founding reservation, 6 of them, and they were organized under Section 16 of the Act of June 18th, 1934, which we talked about earlier, the IRA. The boundaries of the Anishinaabe Nation territories shall be those residents of ceded territories established by the treaties. And we identified which treaties related to the 6 bands, plus we included Sandy Lake. Section 4 talks about the fact that we are very aware of the rights of nature and we want those rights protected. So the jurisdiction of the people of our nation shall extend to all territories outlined in Section 2 of this article and all persons or activities therein, including but not limited to air, water, land, surface, subsurface, natural and cultural resources, and any interest therein. The next Article 11 has to do with citizenship. This is in process. Remember that this document is a draft and we are still working on it. We have to determine the citizenship issue after we address it in the delegation, full delegation. It will be between some form of blood quantum or linear descent, depending on the vote. So, work in progress. Civil rights section. This is based on the Civil Rights and the Indian Civil Rights Act. It deals with due process and liberties and freedom of rights. In exercising his power of self-government, shall not make or enforce any law prohibiting free exercise of religion or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition for redress or grievance, violate the rights of people to be secure in their person, house, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure, nor issue warrant, but upon probable cause, supported by an oath or an affirmation particularly describing the place to be searched and the people or the things to be searched. Subjected the person for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy, no double jeopardy essentially. Compel a person to, or any criminal case to be witness against themselves, take any private property or public use without just compensation, deny any person in a criminal proceeding the right to a speedy and public trial, to be informed of the nature and the cause of the allegations, to be confronted with witnesses against him, to have compulsory process of obtaining witnesses in the favor of his own experience, to have the assistance of counsel for his defense, require excessive bail, impose excessive fines, inflict cruel and unusual punishment, deny to any person within the jurisdiction the equal protection of the law, or deprive any person of the liberty or property without the due process of law, pass any law or attainder or ex parte factor law, or deny any person accused of an offense punishable by imprisonment the right upon request to a trial by jury or not less than 6 persons, or deny the privilege of a writ of habeas corpus to any person in a federal court of the United States to test the legality of detention or other in order of any Indian tribe. The rights of citizens. We talked about the international laws and the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, and we have studied that and put into this alliance that the rights fall under the categories of the UNDRIP. There are 46 categories, articles within the UNDRIP, and they are all spelled out in the website under fdlconstitution.org. I want to explain that they all fall into the following categories: self-determination and indigenous institutions, equality and non-discrimination, survival rights, cultural rights, education and public media, participation in decision-making, and free, prior, and informed consent, economics and social rights, land, territory, and reserves, treaties and agreements, and implementation and interpretation. Article 14 deals with the rights of children. The rights of children was taken from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children. And we put this in as a separate section because our children are precious to us and they are the most important resource that we have, and they also are the future of our continued existence. So the rights state that children have the right to have their general and specific needs to thrive, develop, and survive met. They have the right to freedom of expression, their views respected, and their best interest always considered. Children have the right to nationality, a name, and access to information about themselves. If possible, the children have the right to live in a family environment or alternate care and have contact with both parents. All children have the right to be free from violence directed at them and free from exposure to the violence in their home. They have a right to education, leisure, art, and cultural resources, and special protection for children in the juvenile justice system, children deprived of their liberty and suffering economic, sexual, or other forms of exploitation. All children have the right to health, healthcare, and social security. Section 15 deals with separation of power. And what we have decided to include this because our governance was going to be different entities, and And the alliance document agrees that no branch of the government shall exercise a power or function delegated to any other branch of government. Decided on as a proposed form. Is in Article 16. We proclaim our right as sovereign nations to exercise self-governance. We acknowledge the need for accountability and transparency to maintain the trust and faith of our citizens, which shall be vested in independent governing bodies that function as oversight, policymaking, law, and rulemaking, and implementation and enforcement of tribal laws. Also, an arbitration and dispute resolution and judiciary. The first governance body would be the Grand Council of Fire. The Grand Council of Fire would consist of citizens of our nation. All of us are enrolled in adults. Will have the authority for oversight and the role of proposing initiatives, approving the annual budget, and reviewing the annual audit. Within that group of Grand Council will be citizens councils. They may include and probably will include women's council, elders council, men's councils, youth councils, and reservation councils. Because they'll be a part of the Grand Council Fire, they will have the oversight authority. They can also propose initiatives that will advocate for their own constituent groups. The Central Council shall have the policy-making function. General Assembly shall have the law and rule-making function and have the power to establish law enforcement, dispute resolution mechanisms, and other arbitration, as well as tribal and Supreme Courts. Article 21 hasn't yet to be named. We're still working on this, but it will be the role of implementation and enforcement of tribal rules and law. The arbitration and dispute article 22 indicates that the arbitration and dispute resolution shall include possibly the enrollment appeal court, since the Secretary of the Interior will be removed and they have been doing the appeals on the enrollment. We have to have another body to do those. That may be the dispute resolution group, or it could be an elderly or clan on arbitration. But this section of the body of government was meant for those cases that don't really need to go to a trial or a judicial situation. It can be handled more appropriately under either a traditional method of resolving conflict or restorative justice or something on that order. We're still working on that process. The judiciary, 23 tribal courts, and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will probably be a shared court. It will have the power to interpret and apply the laws. The Supreme Court shall also have the appellate jurisdiction over the cases on the appeals from the trial courts. Article 24, ethics, removal, recall, and vacancies. It's very similar to the MCT Constitution, but spelled out a little more to include a definition of what the major felonies are. Grounds for recall and removal include theft or embezzlement from a tribe. A major felony would be a murder, sexual assault, human trafficking, distribution and selling or trafficking drugs, engaging in ethical violations, malfeasance, dereliction of duty, neglect of duty, good cause, or failure to comply with any provisions of the Alliance. The General Assembly shall enact ordinances for filling vacancies, recall, or removals. Article 25, amendments. The majority vote of the General Assembly may amend the Constitution Alliance, sovereign immunity. We have missing. Our nation may not waive within it the right to be immune from suit except by the authority, and it still this is up to debate, but we first drafted it as the Central Council and the General Assembly Council's role. Elections will be a simple majority vote. And we added just some additional articles, severability, if in case a portion of any of the alliance articles is considered invalid, the rest of them remain intact and in full effect. The savings clause, any previous ordinances and resolutions enacted by the MCT shall continue in full force in effect to the extent that they are consistent with the alliance unless they're amended. And then the usual sections of ratification and adoption will apply. And one last time, the Secretary will have to approve it, and then from there we will be into use of tribal elections. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank the delegation for all the help on drafting this document. It's still in a drafting form. But I especially want to thank our drafting committee, which includes from Grand Portage, Marcy McIntyre, Rita Evans from White Earth. It would be Raymond Delcourt. From Leech Lake, it would be Wally Slovakian. From Mille Lacs, it will be Julie Hernandez Cordero. Hope I did. Oh, Michelle from Champion Lake. I think that's all of them. Thank you.
One more video for you all.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Belcourt of White Earth. I'm a White Earth delegate on the constitutional reform and change. And White Earth delegation asked me to bring up a few of our concerns on the coming change. White Earth's main concern has always been safeguards and protections for the people to be in place whenever we make the change from our current constitution to our next governing document. In regard to the enrollment options, we feel that there should be more options presented. And at this time, we feel that resolution 3215 go forward, allowing Ojibwe blood from other Ojibwe bands to be used for enrollment purposes. That would allow for time for the alliance document to be finished, and then by then we would have a better understanding of what our membership wants. At this time, we feel we do not feel like we can make that decision for 20,000 people. It's a lot of responsibility. We feel that there should be some kind of uniform enrollment process. We feel that leaving that to individual reservations could open the door for abuse, such as people rightfully should be enrolled, not getting enrolled, and people that should get enrolled. And that process could change with every election, so we feel strongly that there should be a real form process that would be guaranteed to be fair to everyone. Our next concern is the removal of the secretary. I know Carol Janik addressed some of these concerns, and Whiter wants to stress the importance of having strong language in place that ensures and protects, guaranteed protection for the people when he is removed. One more concern we have is bringing Sandy Lake into the MCT. We feel that this can be done, and it is a part of our work in changing the Constitution at this time. I know some people feel they are not recognized, but actually they are recognized. And bringing them in to be as easy as allowing for descendants to be enrolled, that they're not readily recognized either. And we are to go forward with you know, as a sovereign nation, then we should not hesitate as a full delegation to make them the Seventh reservation. How better to strengthen our tribe and to bring our own relatives. You know, these guys are our relatives, and I think they deserve the opportunity to be included. And I think we should give that some serious thought. And we wish for listening.
So the delegates would like to thank everybody for your continued dedication and participation in this process. Comments and suggestions are welcomed and frankly necessary. We would like you to contact any delegate to share any of your comments or thoughts moving in the future. And at this time, we are open to taking questions. However, because of our technical setup, I need you to come and get into a line behind me in order to ask those questions so that everybody can hear you.
Carol from FDL has her hand up right now.
Okay, let's hear from Carol.
I guess I was wondering whether or not my PowerPoint presentation is going to be heard.
Is that the one we played?
It was taped.
We did play all of them. Yeah, we all heard it.
The PowerPoint presentation? And if not, I can do it. It's short.
Oh, PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Carol.
Yep, this should be able to screen share.
Go ahead, you should be able to screen share. Go ahead.
Yep, there she is.
I prepared this PowerPoint as an introduction, but I guess it can go as a summary. Let me begin, shorten it out. The Constitutional Reform Committee, comprised of the delegates from the 6 bands of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. They have taken a journey to the past, through the past and the present, and engaged in self-reflection and discovery. A focus of the committee has been to create and recommend a relevant document representative of a structure that will serve all its citizens. A guiding thought from a partial quote by the Iroquois: look and listen for the welfare of the whole people, and always have in view not only the present, but also the coming generations. just a little bit of history, the Constitution Convention to Constitutional Reform. In 2017, the TEC, governing body of the MCT, agreed to hold 3 Constitutional Convention meetings. And this was to address several critical concerns with the IRA Constitution that was adopted in 1936. Those minutes can be viewed on MCT website. In 2018, the TEC changed its approach by discontinuing the Constitutional Convention and initiated delegates from the 6 bands to establish the Constitution Reform Committee. Sandy Lake also joined that process. Before the committee began work, no one placed guidelines or time limits on the delegation's work. How change can be brought about? 2 options, amendment and reform. An amendment involves small-scale adjustments designed to tackle specific problems, adding on to and preserving existing documents. It can be also a knee-jerk process that lends itself to abuse. On the other hand, reform involves the more fundamental reconsideration of constitutional foundations and subsequently affects the tribal government. Constitutional Reform Committee decided on reform approach with an alliance and then individual band constitutions. And the governing body would be through distribution of councils in which the people will have more involvement. After all, sovereignty lies with the people in turn form our government. The purpose of the constitutional reform decision to draft an alliance document was to replace the MCT IRA Constitution, was to provide an umbrella document that keeps us all together. The goal was to create a document that had a strong sense of sovereignty and self-determination without the interference of the Secretary of Interior. The constitutional reform delegates from each band met monthly. The committee's work was done separately, and the work was brought back to the delegation, who then brought it to the citizens, and the cycle repeated. The drafting committee wrote the draft of the alliance document and adjusted it based on comments that were received. The alliance document is a combination of individual band constitutions that was proposed and will provide an overall governing structure that will remedy the flaws in the current MCT IRA-based constitution. It is because the bands have their own issues and needs that we decided to have the separate constitutions drafted at the band level to address those special needs and certain specific issues, as long as they are not inconsistent with the alliance. The delegation identified the following priorities: treaties, governance, enrollment, culture, education, natural resources, communication, and the removal of the Secretary of the Interior. The IRA formed the basis for the current constitution and bylaws of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. It was in 1936 that the 6 bands voted and adopted that constitution. Following that adoption, the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, a tribal organization, not a tribe, was created on July 24th, 1936, to represent and keep the 6 bands together, and as a convenience for the BIA to distribute funds and resources to the people. There are several issues with the IRA, and I imagine these are some of the concerns that the Constitution Convention addressed in those 3 meetings back in 2017, but they are these. The IRA constitutions were designed to force assimilation in response to non-Indians' perception that tribal government models were inferior. They were oversimplified. They concentrated power in only a few members. They intermingled business and government. They are a governing structure that funnels resources through the BIA instead of considering self-determination and control of the resources by the tribe. They fall short of meeting the needs of our individual bands and citizens. The Secretary of Interior retains decision-making powers to approve and review many of the governing procedures. They also fail to incorporate our tradition and culture. They lack independent courts that deal with disputes and interpretation of the law. Even though we are sovereign people, the IRA structure hinders our ability to exercise that sovereignty. The Constitution was changed only 3 times in the 87 years it existed. I'm not going to go over this to make it brief, but we all know that there were 3, one was revision, and then we had some amendments. The Constitution delegation came to realize that the past revisions and amendments to the MCT Constitution did not fix the underlying issues of the IRA Constitution, including the need for separation of power of the governing bodies, realigning policies and values, removing the Secretary of the Interior, and adding an independent judicial body that interprets the laws and resolves disputes. Additionally, the delegation expressed the need to address enrollment criteria, citizens, and natural resources, meaning the rights of nature, a straightforward procedure for removing officials from office, and a system of oversight that provides checks and balances through the structure in which the governing bodies have separation in their authority. This is especially important because historically, centralized governing systems have led to allegations of corruption, questioning of legitimacy when a single government body writes the laws, enforces the laws, and interprets the laws. Centralized governments also lend themselves to a knee-jerk solution by use of amendments to the Constitution, resolutions, and ordinances, rather than thinking the long-term situation that can sustain over a period of time. The delegation also determined that the new governing document must not only reflect our traditions and culture, but it must be sustainable over time. In addition to analyzing the Chippewa tribe's history, the 1936 Constitution and its amendments and revisions, the committee studied many other topics. A few of them include pre-invasion Indian governance systems, traditions and cultures, the treaties made by the United States government, but also what were the United States government's policy during that time. We also studied the meaning of inherent sovereignty, the rights and needs of our people, the rights of nature, blood quantum, linear descent, self-determination, and factors that diminish our sovereignty and threaten our survival. What we learned through the study of treaties, they're essentially based on several international law concepts, and the use of them has put the Chippewa in the international arena from the beginning. Treaties themselves were based on international law and relationships. The Indians had treaties with foreign countries, placing them in the international arena long before the United States made treaties with them. Sovereignty. As a nation, as we were described in those treaties, our people have inherent sovereignty that gave us the right to make our laws and govern ourselves. This sovereignty predates the establishment of the federal government and the United States Constitution. Besides, the United States government recognized, our sovereignty. It was because they recognized our sovereignty, we could engage in this treaty making with them, nation to nation. Because of this sovereignty, we are on an equal level, and this should be considered when collaborating and negotiating nation to nation. Cessions of land. This is the act of land transfer by the treaties, the formal giving up of rights, property, or territory. Cessions is voluntary, or at least it's supposed to be. Almost every one of the Chippewa treaties between the United States were land cession treaties. During the treaty making, the Chippewa nations had to acknowledge themselves to be under the protection of the United States and no other power. This led to the protective principle. This is one of the oldest features of international relationships. It means that the Indian nations, under the protection of the United States, retain their political dominance over internal affairs, but the United States manages their international relations. The reason for bringing this concept up is that the sovereign nation, we have affirmed the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, that defines the minimum standards necessary for survival, dignity, and well-being of Indigenous people, us. This endorsement is stated in the Alliance document. It also forms the basis for Article 13 of the Constitutional Alliance related to the rights of our citizens. It can also be argued that because of the inherent sovereignty, our treaty making, our cessions of land in those treaties, and the protective principle that UNDRIP applies to us directly or indirectly, and may be enforceable in U.S. courts. In treaties, Indians relinquished their land to the United States in exchange for promises to create federally protected reservations. A note in Why Treaties Matter, Relationships, Dakota and Ojibwe Treaties, Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, 2013. It stated that the Ojibwe people in what is now Minnesota signed dozens of treaties with the United States. Among these treaties are famous land cession agreements in which sovereign Indian groups retain ownership or use of natural resources, land, water, timber, minerals, and transfer these rights to the United States. These treaties also tell a story about how people relate to one another and how people relate to the land. Our ancestors knew the importance of the land and resources would be to our future generations. This is why it is so important that we include the rights of nature in the Alliance document, which we have. The treaty study was essential to understand our ancestors' sacrifices to ensure our continued existence. It was also needed to understand what our treaty rights are today. It is now our responsibility to continue our ancestors' legacy for the continued survival of our nation. All this treaty research is posted at fdlconstitution.org. These treaties give us legitimacy as sovereign nations. The treaties are nation-to-nation agreements among sovereign entities, which are political groups with the ability to set rules for their own communities, determine their own membership, care for their own territory, and enter agreements with other sovereign entities. Treaties are still good law today. What diminishes our sovereignty? Our sovereignty was immediately diminished when our ancestors had contact with the Europeans and they claimed discovery document to take control over the land. Treaty stipulations place signatory Indian nations under the protection of the United States. And the United States has not upheld that duty to protect. The plenary power of Congress, which has power over Indian affairs, diminishes our sovereignty. Supreme Court rulings and federal laws also diminish our sovereignty. The IRA diminished it. The language in our Constitution that addresses the rights of citizens and the rights of nature and other rights in our treaty is lacking now. We have put it in the Alliance document. Diminished sovereignty also occurs with the lack of language in the Constitution about values, cultures, customs, and traditions. The oversight by the Secretary of Interior in our Constitution diminishes our sovereignty. The United States Department of Interior, the primary federal agency charged with carrying out the United States trust responsibility, is not fulfilling its role. This diminishes our sovereignty. But the greatest threat to our sovereignty comes from within if our governing bodies do not comply with the constitutional provisions. Mickwich.
So somehow in our technical issues, that was like the second video that was supposed to be shown. So we got a little bit out of order. Does anybody have questions? You have to come up here if you have questions. Because we have no microphones, they screech. So just speak the question.
One of the questions that I had was the alliance document versus the revised constitution. Has the members' input been, or have the members had been consulted on if they want to go ahead with the alliance document, or do they want to just revise the Minnesota Chippewa Tribe Constitution with those additional changes? And the second question that I had was, could you go in depth or detail that Article 11, Section 2? It has to do with each reservation will determine its enrollment. I think that would be good for our members to have the background on that and stuff, you know, that the drafting committee, how they came up with that. So that's all I wanted to say.
If you're talking about the amended revised constitution, we're not using that because it's been voted down.
Oh, really? Okay. But
You all voted down,
Yeah.
not taking out the Secretary of the Interior. So that is not in use at this time.
I'm asking for on behalf of our membership, that our audience that's
Sure.
out there. So
Sure. So that document is not being used right now because we don't have an agreement to remove the Secretary of the Interior. If we come to an agreement, we may pull that back out again because it's already made and we don't like to recreate the wheel, right? It's available to look at, but it's not something that we're doing any action on. And then you wanted some more definition on.
well, I think for the members, I mean, the audience, they should, you know, maybe describe or go into detail that.
What that document did is it took our current revised constitution and every place it said Secretary of the Interior, it was replaced with the words Grand Council. That's it. That's all that document did. And so right now we're not using it. But you had a question about another section?
Section 11.
Section 11?
Yeah, the citizenship on the individual constitution.
Carol, could you address that, please? Section 11?
Section 11 is pretty much kind of been stalled because we're waiting for all the delegation to either come to consensus or come to a majority vote on what we're going to do with enrollment. The Section 2 has to do with, well, the referendum. There was a vote of whether or not it was felt that the enrollment criteria should be determined by each of the bands. That was a more than positive yes, but we're having some issues with coming to consensus in our delegation group. So the language in Article 11 is kind of just sitting there because we'll know that there'll be some sort of agreement, hopefully, or some sort of agreement will go to the vote of the people and they'll determine what language will finally be in that Article 11.
Does that help, Patty? Okay. I just want to make sure that your questions are answered.
This is Sally Fine, Leech Lake delegation.
One of the questions that you asked was, how are we getting this information to the citizens? Each delegation has its own plan about how they do that. Leech Lake has a plan. Every delegation, I'm sure Fond du Lac or White Earth has a plan as well. But that's up to the delegation themselves. We don't tell White Earth how to go out and reach their people. We don't tell Fond du Lac how to do that. At Leech Lake, we do it in the way that the Leech Lake delegation plans to do that. And currently we're getting on the radio and we're going to be doing a lot of radio shows just to get people interested at first. And then we have 14 communities on the reservation that we will stop at along the way and talk about it. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Sally. Yeah, those documents have been shared to the delegates. The delegates, it's your job to share it with your people. And then you bring back comments, and then we would go from there. So every time we come up with a new document, you do what you need to do as delegates to share that with your community members and get the input, and then bring it back and we talk about it again. We have a cycle. We have a work cycle that we've all agreed on, that every time we have a new issue, we have 3 months. We have 3 months to work on the issue. So we brought up that proposed amended revised constitution a couple months ago. We're still supposed to be getting information from our community members on that document. So each delegate has that document. You should be sharing it with your community members and getting input. That's how we do this work. Then the following month, you bring the input back to our convention meeting and we go through it again. And we talk about all of those comments. We talk about that input. And then we may revise something or we may not revise anything. You know how those convention meetings work. However, if we do revise something, then it's up to the delegates to take that revised document and go back out to the community and say, hey, we revised this now. What do you think about this? Get that input and then come back to the convention meeting again. We have 3 months to work on each issue, right? That's what we agreed on. So however you're getting it out to your community members, that's on the delegation group itself. No delegate group is here to tell another delegate group how to do their education to their people.
On our website.
Oh, I'm getting input here to promote our website. It's www.fdlconstitution.org. All of these documents are there for everybody to look at. Everybody can make a comment. There's email addresses posted there. You can send a comment to an email address. You can do it however you like.
Quick question for you. Who does the voting? Who does the voting?
Who does the voting is the question. So who does the voting in the delegations? Each delegation on each issue has one vote.
So
So-
there's one rep for each tribe.
One vote for each tribe.
Okay.
That's how we move things forward. If we don't come to consensus, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's how it's voted on. And the vote is only on whether to move the issue forward or not. We are not making decisions for the people at that time. The people will decide when they make a vote in the secretarial election. That's where we're going to get our final answer from the people. You know, we're not going to get that final answer in our convention meetings. That's not where it's going to happen. Any other questions on the alliance document? Sure.
Stand up now.
Oh, you're standing.
Bonjour, Anine. Kathy Chavers, if you don't recognize me, I'm in my Sunday attire. Not in my official capacity as chairwoman, but I just want to say thank you to all the delegates for this presentation today. As a TEC member, we've been kind of staying out of this because we've been told to stay out of it. But the presentation today was pretty amazing, I think, and the work that you've done. Because it's easy for us to say and hear what your little updates at our meetings, but you've really done a lot. This proves it. And so I just want to say Chi-miigwech to you all, because we are moving forward, and that's good, because that's the intent of the Constitution reform, is to move forward in whatever manner that may be. It may be a whole new constitution, it may be revising, whatever, that's up to the delegates, then eventually up to the membership, but at least something's being done. And that, I want to thank you all for your dedication for that, because it's not easy. I like the process. I wish more TEC members could have been here, or tribal leaders, but of course it's Sunday, but we know we have a short meeting tomorrow because everything is all in one day. And so it's going to be probably a short meeting, but that's why we wanted this presentation here today, so that people had an opportunity to come and see what you guys are doing. And now this will be put on the website also for the MCT. Your link will also be put on the MCT website. We've asked Beth to put your link on there as well. And so it is all about educating our members. And so I just want to say Chi-miigwech and a great job for all you guys have done, because this is pretty amazing, I think. Lengthy, but you know, I mean, it has to be, because you got to make sure that you cover everything that makes it our constitution, not somebody else's. So I just want to say Chi-miigwech. Thank you.
Kathy, do you want this video to be put online too?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Kathy. So do we have anyone on Zoom with questions? I can't see that, but I don't see anybody with hands up.
All right, Sunday Funday, carry on.
Yes, good job. That's all I can say on this.
Carol has her hand up. Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if we could get a commitment from TEC and RBC at this time, as well as MCT, since we were in this process at this level now, and we're going to have to address roles and responsibilities and bylaws, and we may be short of information. And I was wondering if we could get a commitment to get some information when asked.
So what information specifically are you talking about, Carol?
Well, I don't have like a pocket full of answers to that today, but as we process our governance bodies, we have to have a better understanding on some of the things that are going on now, because there may be a transition period, or we may use what we have now with some adjustments, or maybe use all of what we have now. So in our duties and our responsibilities that we'll be writing up for the different councils, we may have questions of MCT or TEC or RBC. So I don't have the specific questions right here today.
So Carol, I've just bounced around the room back and forth on both sides of the room here. We will be getting some more information from Beth. She and Kathy have been talking here about getting that information to you as soon as possible.
Okay.
And let's confirm now that we do have Beth and MCT staff coming for our July 20th delegation convention meeting to come so that they can tell us what they do.
Oh, great.
July 20th at the White Earth Convention. So I do believe we have them scheduled for 9:30 a.m., correct? Perfect. So we'll have a lot more information to work with, as well as the questions and answers that have been already emailed to Beth. So we'll be getting a lot more information coming in, so we can continue to work on these issues. As you can see, you know, we need more information to be able to move forward on some of those articles throughout the Alliance document. Anything else?
I have a comment.
Okay, come on up, please.
Mike LaRock from the Secretary Treasurer from the, I'm standing too, Kathy.
I know you are.
Secretary Treasurer from the White Earth Nation. I also too want to thank the delegations that are putting in the work. One of my biggest questions is who's making sure that these delegations are going back to their membership and giving them the information. That's one of my biggest questions I've always had since I've been on TEC. It's been about a year now. But my biggest question is, why we understand Fond du Lac's doing a good job on it. We understand White Earth is doing a really good job, and whatever ones are doing it. But I've always had that question about when you send those documents back to the delegations from the other tribes, who's making sure that they're getting the information? That's my biggest question, because I don't think we're hitting all the people. And I think that was a valid question by Patty, is that who's getting the information? Is the membership actually knowing what's going on? Are they getting educated? Are they being informed? That's my biggest question. Chief Miigwech, everybody. So.
Miigwech, thanks for that.
Oh, I do want to say one thing. I had seen a person out, just a regular person, a regular citizen out there, and they said, so is that TEC meeting, is that a closed meeting? I'm like, no, it's not. It's for everybody. So if anybody wants to go to those TEC meetings, they're open meetings. All of our meetings are open. You know, we don't tell people to, you know, but what we don't do is we don't tell White Earth what to do. We don't tell Fond du Lac what to do. We do our own. We reach out to our people in the way that we find best. Every one of us do. So I guess you'd probably have to talk to some people, some regular citizens who aren't on the delegation to find out, are you getting this information? That should be everybody's job. Miigwech.
Thanks, Sally. I want to respond to that too. Your question about who's making sure. So what we have right now, we have this thing that we call a facilitation committee. That committee meets the week after our convention meeting to prepare for the next convention meeting. Okay, and that facilitation group is one delegate from each reservation. And those delegates get this information in that facilitation committee meeting or in the convention meeting. Currently, we have one contact person from each reservation, and that's what we call them, contact person. That person receives everything, and it's up to them to distribute that information to the other delegates and to their public. Now, none of us is responsible to police the other delegations. None of us. So I don't know what the other delegations are doing to educate people. It's none of my business. But it is my business to make sure Fond du Lac people get this education, and I'm trying to assist all of the delegations to be able to do that by putting everything on that FondDuLacConstitution.org website. It's up to every Minnesota Chippewa Tribe member to get involved. The delegates, we can do the best we can. That's all we can do. But it's up to the members to get interested, to get involved, to update their addresses, and a whole bunch of other things that a lot of people don't take responsibility for in general.
Does
So,
the constitutional delegates have their own website, their own website, like you have, like Fond du Lac? Does the whole group have, you have?
no, we do not,
You do
because you
not.
know, at the very beginning of our Constitution Convention meetings, we discussed having a website. And we had somebody that was gonna do it, and they never did. They never did, so I did. That's all I could tell you.
You did for Fond du Lac.
I did for everyone,
Okay, all right, thank you.
everyone. It's just named fondulacconstitution.org because you gotta pay money for a website.
Mhm.
And it's associated with our email address. But the same information is good across all 6 tribes.
What's the website again?
www.fdlconstitution.org.
Leech like promotes Congress page. Because we don't want to do our own.
You know, if you don't want to recreate the wheel, link to that page.
Yeah,
It's really easy.
laugh at the disabled guy, Mike.
Yes.
I just want to share it since it's being recorded.
Sure. Yeah. You know, yeah, Julia's bringing up a really good question because last month, the Fond du Lac delegates took a list of questions that people would ask about this constitution reform stuff. And we answered it. We took the questions and the answers, and we published that in our Fond du Lac newsletter last month. Okay. I don't have the Fond du Lac newsletter linked to our website, and they don't link to us either. What can I say?
So if you wanted to read it, you go to FDLRes.com.
Yes, if you want to read that, article, yep, go to www.fdlres.com. And then you could go in there and find that the monthly newsletter, and you can read that article. And it has a lot of questions and answers that would be really interesting for people. And it's also something that you could share with your other reservations. Absolutely. Yes, we are firm believers in copy and paste. We do not want to recreate the wheel every time we want to do something. Everything we do, we share. Yep. Carol, did you have anything else to share with us today?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Beth has something.
Beth has something.
Oh, just logistics.
Up here.
It's just
No.
about dinner.
Up here.
It's just dinner.
Well, we can't hear you on the Zoom, on the recording.
There's dinner for about 30 or so people.
Oh, for in-house.
It's just soup and sandwiches, but we wanted to make sure people have something. So, I just also.
Oh, good.
Yay. All right. So I guess if we don't have any other questions in the room and we have no other questions on Zoom,
Nothing online.
I would say that we can just close this meeting for today and we'll revisit some of this stuff later. Thanks.
Great job.